is a longtime collaborator of mine, and he'll introduce himself, but I want Stephen to just set the stage, give a bit of background and context to the Ethereum climate platform.
Great, thank you, Bill. I have the privilege of working for one of the founders of Ethereum, Joe Lubin. Joe and Vitalik Buterin, I would guess, are two of the better-known founders of the Ethereum blockchain. It was founded in 2015, just about the same time as the Paris Accords were being signed. And frankly, at the time, there was a genuine alignment, I would say, between Ethereum and its goals of the end of duplicity in financial transactions, of greater transparency in the world, of distributing power to folks on the periphery from those in the center who held on to way too much of it in the commercial economy. And Joe Lubin and Vitalik and the others got together and launched the Ethereum blockchain in 2015 in order to address those issues. Ethereum has grown to become a global financial ecosystem of over a $250 billion, and it is now, however, manufactured in a completely different means than when it was launched. When it was launched, its so-called consensus mechanism was built on proof of work, much the way those of you who are familiar with Bitcoin understand proof of work. But in September of last year, it so-called merged or transitioned to a new form, a new way to secure the blockchain using validators in what is called proof of stake. In doing that, through innovation alone, without any financial products, offsets, or complex climate architecture, just through innovation alone, it managed to drop 99.92% of its carbon footprint. Its carbon footprint was measured. Ethereum managed to build a relationship with Cambridge University, who do the Bitcoin Energy Index, and with our support, Cambridge University then undertook a study of Ethereum's carbon footprint and Ethereum's historic carbon footprint. This is a study that was released in the last few days with regard to its historic carbon footprint. That historic carbon footprint was determined to be 27.5 million metric tons. To give you some idea of what that represents, you're within maybe 5% of the annual energy consumption of New Zealand at that level. After the transition to proof of stake, Ethereum's carbon footprint today is the size of the Faroe Islands, 2,800 kilotons per year. And in undertaking this transition at its own expense and with a number of my colleagues as part of the dev team, we realized it was a very different role in sustainable finance now that we were no longer by our own efforts, no longer a brown technology. We realized that we had two things to bring to the game. Number one, this extraordinary product for transmitting information and states of value, but in addition to that, we also had the opportunity now as a green tech to hyper-focus on the sustainable finance arena. And in doing that, we reached out to other members of the Ethereum community, companies like Aave and Filecoin. I mean, the Ethereum community, broadly speaking, so-called layer 2s and EVMs like Polygon and Near and Celo and Aave, File. That with our carbon footprint, but rather we are talking to my friend Sylvia, who's approaching. Okay, great. Great. We are, is that better, Sylvia? It's the device. Hello, is this better? Yeah. We are, we have now put together a collaborative platform to engage in broad-scale decarbonization and sustainable finance, but climate-aligned finance. But in addition to that, we are assembling a fund for the purpose of not an offset, but actually to aim at that 27.5 million metric tons, very big numbers. I say New Zealand population of 5 million for a year. We are aiming to go beyond the 27.5 million metric tons of Ethereum's historic carbon footprint to finance projects in an ongoing basis that make Ethereum a leading player.
Great, thanks, Stephen. So before we get into the what, and we have some slides to present and a video on the Ethereum Climate Platform, I'd like to ask Anna, who, as the CEO of Climate Collective, which aggregates capability across quite a number of providers in the space, but Anna as well has a history in the green finance space beyond the Web3 or tech side of things, just to articulate a bit on why she believes collaboration is important, both amongst tech players, but between tech and kind of the finance space. So,
yeah, thank you so much, Bill. I think it's a great question. There are a couple of reasons why I think it's very important, particularly right now, to do this. Two that I'll mention. One is the adoption of technology. It takes time. And technology comes in one shape, kind of goes in one shape, and after it's entered into a partnership and been molded and modeled around the partners and their needs and the reality of the world, it comes out a little bit different. So there's this incredible opportunity when you're a collective, a group of different companies, to actually influence how the technology evolves. And I think that's much greater as a collaborative, as a collective, than just sort of one entity on its own. And then the other piece, I also think that introducing new technologies in whatever sector you're doing, disrupting any sector is difficult. You're always going to find a lot of entities that are not happy that you're there talking about new things, trying new ways of doing things. And sitting together as a collection of companies, particularly when you're talking about two complex and fairly controversial topics. I mean, you're talking about climate finance, very complicated, fairly complex. And you're also talking about digital technologies, in this case blockchain, which has its own reputation and sort of contextual specific concerns among some in the audience, right? If you combine those two, it's a complicated intersection to be operating in. So I think being a coalition of companies as part of the Ethereum Climate Platform is really makes the partnership much stronger. You've also enlisted some really influential advisors, and I think just pooling people's knowledge and experience is really the way to go when you're trying to advance something that is disruptive, potentially massively impactful, but new.
Thanks, Anna. I appreciate that. And we'll hear from an investor toward the end of the panel as to what might pique his interest, but also give him panic about the sort of how tech's coming into the space as well. So I'll just Toby's going to give a nice run through of some of the key bones of the Ethereum Climate Platform. But what I'll do is just maybe provide a few definitions, a little bit of context before he does that. So. This is sort of when the fund launches. You've got the fund at the inception. You've got a process there we call redemption of CDUs for MOIs, and then settlement of MOIs for MOUs. If some of you were here in the last talk, I defined some of these, but I'll do it again now. The CDU is a carbon debt unit, and that is a unit of subscription into this carbon fund. And so if you think about a traditional limited partner interest in a fund, the CDU is a digital interest that you can hold, you can trade. But importantly, you can enter the fund with that. You're now a participant in the fund. And this is down the track when the fund launches. Next, and very important, is redemption of a CDU for an MOI. So an MOI is a mitigation outcome interest. That terminology was developed under that Project Genesis 2. If some of you were here, the UNFCCC helped kind of craft some of the nomenclature and the features of that. And so that's a legal interest in future mitigation outcomes. That's essentially, for those in the carbon finance space, a carbon forward agreement in digital form. So if I'm now a fund participant and the fund's investing in multiple projects over time, each project that's issuing its own MOI or series of MOIs, maybe 5-year contract with many instruments involved, each project will have a unique MOI and for each vintage each year. And if I'm a participant in the fund and I like a particular project and I want to attach my CDU to that particular project, let's say I'm a compliance buyer or a voluntary buyer, and I want to swap, in essence, my ownership participation in the fund for an actual unit, a forward unit, that's what's happening here. So I'm redeeming my CDU now for a particular credit from a particular project or a forward contract from a particular project. There's a step here that's not depicted, but if some of you might think, well, look, not every project's the same. Some credits go for $5, some for $50, some for $100. How do you express that? By converting a CDU to an MOI. So there's I don't know if Toby will touch into that, but a way to address then the premium or difference between the value of different MOIs. And then finally, as I talked about before, mitigation outcome unit is a 1 metric ton digital carbon unit. Many of the panelists today talked about different approaches that are converging in terms of how carbon credits, 1 metric ton units, are being digitized, enhanced with data, and so forth. The last bit there, PFIN, is a project finance token. So in some cases, many cases, as projects come for financing and they need 20 mil, let's say, maybe 10 or 15 of that you can solve through a forward carbon contract, but there's still a financing gap. And so we wanted to structure ourselves so that if there was some additional debt or equity or convertible that the project needed, that we were able to issue an instrument that closed that gap. So that's more of a financing unit, not a carbon unit. Just to give you a little bit of flavor, we've been going through quite a rigorously large project pipeline through our partnership network, and we've been looking at projects across mangroves, forest restoration, grassland rehabilitation, regenerative agriculture, zero carbon cement, electric vehicles, oil and gas decommissioning. So, we have quite a wide lens in terms of the sort of projects we're looking at, but what's common is the project compliant with a recognized methodology and standard? Very importantly, is the developer experienced? Are they, have they done this before in country? Do they have the right infrastructure around them, the right staff to manage projects on large landscapes, for example, for natural capital assets? Really kind of critical developer criteria, and then only then do we go down to project level criteria. So we've sort of shortlisted what we've been looking at down to about 19 million tons per annum of projects, and we're looking closely at a few projects right now to execute as seed assets for the fund. So with that, I'll hand off to Toby to do a brief demo of some of the key features. So I think.
Great, thanks Bill. So yes, I'm Toby Gooden. I'm managing all things product at All Infra. I'm also a tech co-lead on the Ethereum climate platform, along with Clemens Wan from Consensus. So now I'll go through a demo of the Ethereum climate platform prototype, and I'll show some of the functionality which we will be releasing along with the launch of the fund next year. And I'll go through the prototype from 2 different user perspectives. So firstly, from the perspective of a project owner organization, and secondly, from the perspective of an investor organization. To start with the project owner, to set the scene that this organization will already be onboarded to the Ethereum climate platform. They've already received funding for one project, and now they're applying for funding and reviewing the terms of the investment agreement on a second project. So with that in mind, I'll go through reviewing and digitally signing the investment agreement, and then creating a vintage of these forward carbon credits, or MOIs, as we call them, mitigation outcome interests. I will issue and transfer the tokenized project securities to the ECB fund, and in return, I'll receive a loan principal investment. Also via the platform, which I won't go into in this demo, but you can also make coupon repayments, view and manage your portfolio of climate and financial assets, and stake and yield any idle assets in the integrated lending protocol from our partner Aave. Let's hope this works. Sorry, I'm struggling to play the video. Is someone with the mouse able to press play? You might need to press the play button at the bottom. Okay. So we're not able to play now? Okay.
Okay, I think you need to go with them too. Okay, so they'll get that up and running. What I'll do now maybe is ask Adith to introduce himself and his company. And as I mentioned before, we're looking at a wide range of projects and looking at how developers are both addressing their projects but using technology. And so, these are some of the things that we think about, but from sort of on the ground, I'd love Adith to describe what he's doing and how he thinks about technology in the context of getting financing into the assets that they're involved with.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, thanks everyone. So I'm Adith Murthy. I'm the founder and CEO of Boomitra. And we at Boomitra, we work with farmers around the world, farmers and ranchers around the world, to help them improve their soils and generate carbon removal credits from them improving their soils. So when you saw on the slide earlier about the grasslands and the croplands, that's the kind of stuff that we do. We work with both pastoralists and ranchers and farmers of all sizes, all the way from 1 acre to hundreds of thousands of acres, to enable them to adopt improved practices that improve their soils, and at the same time have co-benefits for them of making them more adapt to climate change, make their yields more sustainable, but at the same time also generating carbon removal credits, which we are able to then, of course, sell to corporates to help finance the entire thing. So we use digital technology in many, many different ways, and it's a key aspect of how we deploy this at scale. So right now, our monitoring is crucially done using satellites and AI, and that drives down the costs by nearly 99%. So in these kinds of projects, typically doing it the conventional way by taking soil samples and then sending soil samples to the lab, that results in usually the cost of the measurement being more than half of the cost of the credit itself. So when the cost of measurement is more than half of the cost of the credit, it's very hard to finance these kinds of things. In our world, when we do this with satellites and AI, we still take a very small amount of soil samples to validate that our technology is working, but crucially, we have driven down the cost by 99%. I have a project in my portfolio that would have taken 50,000 soil samples to do correctly in the conventional way. Now we are doing that with 200 soil samples a year, as opposed to 50,000. So we have reduced it significantly, drive down the cost, and one of the pieces of doing that is digital technology, in our case using satellites and AI to measure the soil carbon levels. And then beyond that, whenever farmers work with us, they are interacting through digital technology. So it's either through smartphone apps or dashboards, and even our partners on the ground who work with us in a similar capacity use our apps in order to interact with the farmers. So ultimately, this is a part of the real economy, if you say, working with farmers. So it's not necessarily, you can't digitize everything. So what I call it is, it's a phygital model. There's a physical aspect and the digital aspect. But then the digital aspect is becoming bigger and bigger and promotes more and more scalability and sustainability as we go forward. And providing this kind of an insight using satellites and AI, it enables us to simplify the process of monitoring the project, but crucially it also enables us to advise the farmers on a personalized basis using the satellites and AI. And thirdly, provide a degree of information, pseudo-real-time information, to the clients as well. Historically, in carbon projects, there has been a gap in data between what is happening on the ground versus what the clients, the people who actually buy the carbon credits see. And that gap can also be compounded by having many intermediaries in the chain as well. But crucially now, we're able to provide dashboards with the same information that we give to the audits, with the same information that we give to the farmers. We're able to provide that as well to the clients, to enable them to also see what is going on in pseudo-real time and to understand that the carbon that they bought, the carbon removal that they bought, stays removed. It's crucial to be able to see that because you can only take some actions towards solving a problem if you're able to monitor the situation. If you can't monitor the situation, then you have many issues. So right now, of course, the carbon markets have had some issues in the past year, but that has been mostly because of this. How do we measure what is going on and know that, credibly so, that the carbon has been sequestered and the integrity is there? And digital systems have the potential to play a huge aspect in solving for that. And AI-based systems like ours are one aspect of it. Then there's the general digitization, and then there's also the potential for tokenization and the smart contracts of various sorts. You heard, of course, from Bill about the stuff that ECP is doing. On our side, we are also looking into making our contracts with the farmers, the landowners, smart contracts. So even the farmers and landowners can feel a guarantee when the outcomes in that contract are actually met, that they will receive delivery of the payments for their carbon credits that they have generated. So there's potential for digitization and using the right technologies across the spectrum. It's just up to us to be creative and ensure that we're deploying the technologies in a proper way that actually creates more efficiency. Not just technology for the sake of technology, but the appropriate ones that will actually create efficiency. And that's where we head towards. Because at Bhumitra, right now we operate across 5 million plus acres, 150,000 plus farmers around the world, and 10 million plus tons of CO2 removed in our projects. But to truly move the needle on climate change, we need to reach a gigaton scale. 1 billion plus tons of CO2 removed. And that is our goal for 2030. And in order to do that, we need to add 2 more zeros to all of our traction metrics, actually. Just 2 more zeros. 2 zeros. And digital technology will be a key piece in making that happen. And secondly, partnerships, like with the folks on the stage here, will be a key piece to making that happen. And that's what we're doing.
Thanks so much, Adith. And one thing just to add to that's what you described is really powerful during kind of the life cycle of operating and developing and operating these sort of assets. Now, if you look at it through the lens of 190 plus countries where you're dealing with carbon mitigation projects across vast landscapes and looking back at where did those tons come from. They're in a report that a validator has somewhere, and just kind of the record keeping across all these countries that have to report to the UN, and to be able to look back on it 3-5 years later to make sure it was correct, having as much of that in an environment that's trusted. It's connected to specific time periods at specific locations, really makes the life easier on the aftercare side, the carbon accounting side, the corresponding adjustment side. So I think you're kind of future-proofing the headaches of, or against headaches in the administration of Paris agreements. So thanks for that. I think we figured out how to get the slides running. So.
Yeah, thanks. Could we play the first demo? Okay, so yeah, this is from the project owner organization, and I'm logging into the platform. Arriving at the dashboard, we can see we have the Ethereum Climate Platform fund-wide statistics here, such as total funded projects, total capital deployed, forward carbon credits issued, MOIs issued, and MOUs issued. In the center here, we have our project owner specific statistics, such as funded projects, total capital deployed, the amount of MOIs I'm holding, the amount of MOUs we're holding. And at the bottom here, we can see our climate projects. At the bottom, we have this East African climate project in Kenya, which has already received funding, and we can see the status here is to make a coupon payment. And we can view details here, such as description. We can look at the historic MOU deliveries, and we can browse various project details. We can see the original carbon standard there is Vera, the methodologies, the crediting period, and the contracted TCO2 volume. And we could also make a coupon repayment via the platform. And now if we look at our coastal mangrove project here, we are looking to actually get funding for this project, so we need to review our MOI investment agreement. And so let's view project details again, and we can see the details here similar to before. We don't have any MOUs delivered yet because we haven't actually got funding for the project. So now we can review the MOI contract, and we can look at terms such as the delivery schedule, the volume contracted, the agreed price per MOI, which the ECP fund will pay us. Again, here's our delivery schedule and these sort of things, and when we're happy, we can digitally sign via the platform at the bottom here. So we can, there we go, sign, and also to have a record of that signature on-chain, we'll also connect our MaskWallet. wallet. Great, and now we can see the document being signed, and the next step is to actually mint these MOI tokens, these carbon forwards. So this is the project details for which we're minting for. I need to now put in the vintage details. So we'll be minting this for the whole of 2024, as it's a forward carbon credits. And I set the volume as per the agreement. This is the volume that we'll be minting and for that year. And token increment of 1 means that each token will be worth 1 ton of CO2 removal. And now we can see that our status has changed to pending approval. So an ECP fund administrator will need to check all of the information and make sure it fits with the agreement that we place. And if we skip forward a bit, we can see that that's been reviewed and approved. And now we can actually go ahead and mint these MOI tokens. And again, it's an on-chain operation. We're minting these tokens on-chain. So we need to sign the transaction with our MetaMask wallet. And if we go now to our portfolio, we can see that this vintage has been minted and issued and held now in our account. 2024, the Coastal Mangrove Project. And as per the agreement, we need to deliver these MOIs to the ECP fund. And once that's reviewed, we will receive the investment from the carbon finance investment for the MOIs. And you can see now that we're also looking for a more traditional loan also from the fund. So we have another agreement to review. This time we're looking for $5 million. And we can look through the terms of this debt agreement, 5% interest, these sort of things. And again, when we're happy, we can digitally sign at the bottom through the platform. Great. And now we are ready for deal creation. So we can go ahead and create deal, and we currently support 3 different deal types, so debt, convertible, and equity. This deal is traditional debt investment, and so we can put in the token information, the tenor and coupon configuration. Again, all of these things will be checked by an ECP fund administrator to make sure that they match the terms of the agreement. And at the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see, but there's a little co-invest option. So the ECP fund has an arrangement with certain investors to have the ability to also invest a portion directly into the debt or equity of climate projects. And you will see now that we have a co-invest agreement as well, I think at 5% with a with one of the ECB fund investors directly into the debt of this project. Great. And now we need to choose a recipient of the rest of the security tokens, and it will of course be the ECB fund. It's an on-chain operation, as we will be transferring the project security tokens to the ECB fund, and once approved, we will see that we will also receive the principal payment of 5 million USD, and there you go. Obviously, I've skipped ahead a bit there, and we've received an additional 5 million in funding. And we can go to the portfolio screen now and see where that came from. So that arrived in USDC, which is why it came so fast. And we're staking some of the idle USDC in the integrated lending protocol from Aave to earn additional yield. So I think that's it from the project owner perspective. Could we go to the next slide, please? I'm not sure if I can do it through this. Let's see. One slide back, please. Yeah. Just a heads up, there will also be a video on this one, which I'll ask you to play in like 1 minute. But now we're going to go through from the demo from the perspective of an investor into the fund. And investors are able to browse the prototype and look for the ECP portal to find projects of interest that have been funded. They can also view available vintages of these carbon credit forwards and these carbon credits. Sorry, that was me. And then they can also purchase these tokens through the exchange, as Bill mentioned, the exchange of the carbon debt units. And we've allowed the market to, through a price discovery mechanism, we allow the market to dictate a potential premium on top in USDC, since there's a wide variety of qualities and different carbon credits in different projects with different demand. So we've allowed the market to sort of dictate what is a fair premium there. Also, via the platform, the investor can transfer or retire MOUs if they want to make environmental claims, and they can manage, again, their portfolio of climate and financial assets, as well as staking idle assets in the lending protocol to earn additional yield. Is it possible to play this video? There's one more link. This is the last one. Yeah. Great, yeah, this looks correct. Yeah, thanks. So now I am signing in from the perspective of an investor. And we can see we're greeted with a very similar dashboard. We have the Ethereum ECP-wide statistics at the top. We have slightly different statistics in the center for the investor. So we see that we have these 2 million carbon debt units we currently hold. We can see the performance of our portfolio is 9% annual percentage yield. And we can look at the MOIs and MOUs held. And now quickly, if we go to the Discover projects, we can browse the ECP portal and we can search by project type, location, keyword, these sort of things, and find funded projects of interest. And we can view their details. Similarly as before, so we can view the project details here again. Look at the historic MOU deliveries, and we're able to browse the available MOI and MOU vintages here. And we can see there. I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to purchase some MOIs from the Coastal Mangrove project, which we just onboarded. And again, you know, as an investor, I can see all of these project details and description and MOUs delivered, historical performance, the projected volume of delivery, etc. And on the right pane there, you see I can browse available vintages of MOIs and MOUs. So let's purchase from that same vintage we just created in the previous flow. We select the 2024 vintage, and it's an on-chain operation, so I need to be connected with my MetaMask wallet. And I can click here, buy MOIs. Let's say I want to buy 100,000 MOIs. We can see the automatic calculator here at the bottom. So it's a one-to-one conversion for these carbon debt units. And then it's an additional premium. The price discovery has found it to be 8 USDC premium on top. So an additional 800,000 USDC needs to be paid on top. So I can click here to buy MOI, and it's an on-chain exchange. And so I need to sign with my MetaMask wallet, and we've skipped ahead a bit here again, but now we can see it's been successful, and we can view this vintage in our portfolio here from the Coastal Mangrove project. Great. And we can see that our CDUs have gone down by 100,000. We now have 1.9 million. I think we can stop the video and go to the next slide, if that's possible. Thank you. Do we have time for the... Yeah, so thanks. Just very quickly, I don't have time to go through all of the contributions from each of the individual partners, but we have non-profit NGOs, we have global expertise advisors, and we really have the best in Web3. To just name a few, Toucan, we had Raphael up here before. They will be providing their bridging technology. Solid World are doing a great job with risk identification on the carbon credit delivery, and we have Cello, who have an app for stakeholder engagement and ensuring that value gets down to the stakeholders on the ground and the local communities, as well as Aave, who have integrated their lending protocol. But yeah, grab me afterwards if you want me to go through any partner in particular. I'll hand back to Bill.
Thanks, Toby. Yeah, we wanted everyone to have just a sense of what financing through a digitally enhanced system actually looks like. So how would you look at a project? How would how much of that is similar to a typical investment? What are the factors that you need to look at? How does that digital financial instrument relate to the performance of an asset and the settlement of that asset with carbon credits over time? But what I want to do is maybe pass over to Andy Ertel, longtime investor in the space. He's definitely got a perspective from various stages of the market and has seen some of the perils and some of the I guess points of glory in the market, and just seen how some of the the ways in which people try to solve issues in climate finance at scale and how that either works or doesn't work. So I don't know, Andy, take it wherever you wish. It'd be good to, what we're trying to do is, as a Web3 community, sort of take in as much as we can investors that have deployed plenty of capital and work through projects. And so it'd be good to hear, I guess, Andy, what's on your mind in the recent years?
So, thank you. So I have been around for, I think this is my 25th year of attending COP meetings. So I would say from the beginning, or from COP 4 onwards, I've been involved. And there we were actually explaining what emissions trading was, because the only emissions trading program in the world at that time was for sulfur dioxide credits to deal with acid rain in the United States. We don't talk about that anymore because the program succeeded. So that was my first lesson in how market-based solutions can have a huge impact on solving environmental problems. I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. We were involved in doing the first, for 25 years I was the CEO of the largest intermediary in the energy and environmental markets called Evolution Markets. And we saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of the carbon markets, the renewable markets, uranium, coal, biomass, power, etc. There were some lessons learned along the way. What I think is really exciting about what's going on here is the embracing of technology. When I started out in the sulfur dioxide market, I was leaving the floor of the New York Mercantile Exchange, where we still jumped up and down. Probably in the oil pit, if you took 1,000 people, literally, and put them in this room, that's how I went to work every day at the World Trade Center. It was playing hockey and chess at the exact same time. And when I got involved with the environmental markets, in order for me to figure out who the players were in the sulfur dioxide market, who was long, who was short, who was trading, I had to do a Freedom of Information Act filing with the US EPA. I drove down to Washington, D.C., EPA headquarters, and I was kind of expecting a floppy disk or so, or a couple of them. And they're like, no, we printed it out for you. I'm like, okay. And they opened a loading bay door, and there was about 50 boxes of information. So I found a U-Haul spot, and I drove back to New York with a U-Haul of printouts. I sat in a room for 2 months. There were no furniture. I think I might have had a chair they gave me. I sat there on my own personal laptop because no company would buy anybody a laptop at that point. Lotus 1, 2, 3. And I figured out who was long and short. And then I called them and I just, it took me about a year. I did my first transaction. And then I got involved in a lot of these different markets. And technology today, and what we're doing today is I sold that company a year ago. And I've committed with my partners. I'm long about $100 million of carbon right now. I don't think there's of the 70,000 people here. I would say there's probably a handful, if not less, that actually have that kind of position. It's something that I'm not sure my wife fully appreciates. She likes common stock and treasury bills and things like that. But, it's really exciting to see how technology is bridging the gap, right? We were laughing last night. I grew up in my grandparents' former home, and I had a rotary dial phone. And I was jealous of my friends that had a push-button phone at their house. And one day, I was actually on a gondola with 2 Motorola flip phones, and I did one of the biggest SO2 deals ever done while I was on vacation in Whistler, Colorado. And, just to kind of see how technology started changing the markets and our ability, and then how traders started using chat and all of that, to kind of see all of this happen is incredibly exciting. And I think where these guys have it right is, I think early on, when the crypto and blockchain world a year or 2 ago, or maybe 3, came to the environmental markets, in my opinion, they were looking for a use case, right? I think that was the story, and I don't think all of them necessarily had good intentions. I think the first vehicle, Climate DAO, something was trading at $3,000, which was worth 5 cents, and it was actually, they were already retired, so they actually had no environmental value anymore. And I learned that, like all other things in markets, there are bad actors, there are good actors. But what I really learned about the blockchain world and the crypto world was the amazing power to reach into another generation of investors. And I think that's what's really exciting here, is how do we reach out to the next generation? How do we reach out to the developers of these projects? And how, as an investor, I make my educated bets, I do my research, I've walked the slums this past year of Calcutta, I've visited India 4 or 5 times on several projects we're involved in there. I've been to Africa, my partners have been down, etc. So anything that we can do to streamline the process, but also to know that the money is flowing on the ground. We've got 52 billion tons a year of reductions that have to happen by 2050. And we're running out of time. And so if technology, if Ethereum and this platform can help accelerate that and make investors comfortable and make this asset class investable, that is really key. For us, as an investor, 30 years on Wall Street, there's no such thing as a good surprise. Coming home and surprise party for your 50th birthday. That's a good surprise. But there's on Wall Street, there's nothing, especially when you're dealing with carbon projects. There's no such thing as a good surprise. You know, you bought methane capture from a landfill, and all of a sudden the vendor that had a 30-year contract, the government gets changed, and now there's no garbage being delivered to that landfill. So how are you going to get the methane? Or your forest just burnt down. Or your solar panels got hit in a hailstorm. So in general, there's no good surprises. But if I can feel comfortable, more comfortable, that a project is succeeding through the monitoring of that project, and that I can know, and my investors can know, that they are having that impact on the ground, and that the social, the SDGs are actually not just a box that's being checked, but a real change in people's lives and the environment. I mean, this is where we need to go. And so we're excited as investors to be involved with these guys and ladies, excuse me. And, you know, I think this is the beginning of the journey, right? You know, I'm still getting my education on Toucan and Web3 and all of that, and looking forward to it because I think this is very empowering. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Really appreciate it. I didn't hear that story about the printouts and the U-Haul truck before, so that's. But as you're saying, you know, you're learning, you know, some of the Web3 features, companies. You know, one thing that you'll appreciate as well is that as abstract as some of that is, you know, some of the Web3 tooling and what is crypto? Is it real? Is there substance there? Is it you know, is it vaporware? We had a very similar reality in the carbon market. You know, in the early days of the carbon market, you know, I was going into, you know, into China, into India, into lots of places in Southeast Asia, and, you know, it's often the first time the either government or a large either state-owned or private entity was hearing about the carbon market. I was coming in with the proposition of, I'm going to take your steel plant, I'm going to craft this project around it that's going to capture waste heat. I'm going to invest in the equipment that's going to reduce your energy consumption, and I'll fund that. And I'll get your project approved by this United Nations thing over there, and I'll pay you for this thing that doesn't exist, this like almost anti-product, this carbon emission reduction. And so the early years, you know, you could imagine the faces, you know, it was like, there's a scam here somewhere, you know, there's too good to be true, or, you know, what's the catch? And sometimes we do have that challenge in the, you know, in the tech space and the Web3 space of, you know, all right, sifting through the, you know, the overly creative ideas, the product trying to find a use case rather than, you know, here's the way things work, and trying to take out friction or fix certain things. And so it's a bit of an awkward dance. We're not always getting it right. But I do think that, in a sense, the DNA of the carbon market and the green finance space is similar to that in the blockchain space, where, you know, a lot of that DNA is around impact and fixing things. You know, there's something wrong with the financial markets. There's something wrong with, you know, being beholden to large institutions that may have, you know, sort of misaligned interests that can print more money. You know, is there ways that we can deal with that? And that's a little bit of the DNA of the crypto and blockchain space, but certainly the carbon space is, you know, can we fix you know, problems at scale? And I think having to do this on large landscapes in 190 plus countries, often in very small plots of land, bit by bit, and trying to be able to track that in a way that doesn't require backing up a U-Haul to get, you know, the documentation to be able to then talk to your investors and say it's all real. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, and so we're working step by step to get there. It's great to have input from, you know, from real project practitioners and investors in the space, and yeah, really appreciate the collaboration, guys. With that, I guess I don't know if anyone's got. I think we're out of time. Maybe 2 minutes. So You'll grab two.
A year and 2 weeks ago, I think, Misamba from Globalization Hub, Alex, Sylvia, gave us a forum in which to announce and make several promises to the climate community and the Web3 community. Those promises that we made were to assemble a consortium of best of Web3 and some Web2 and some NGOs together into a single platform. As you can see from the slides on my right and on my left, a year later, we did what we said we were going to do. Secondly, we made the promise that we were going to take these companies, maybe some of the NGOs who actually compete with each other, but in particular companies that are competitors and frenemies, and get them to agree to knit their technology together into a single platform that presents best of Web3 tooling for climate finance. And what Toby just walked you through is the result of a year of work by brilliant architects and brilliant devs in the delivery of the promise we made a year ago. We're making today another promise, which is by the time we are back here next year, we will not only have assembled a fund, a scale to deal with our North Star of 27.5 million metric tons of carbon, we will have, and perhaps even indeed in the next week or two, we will announce the first ever investment on behalf of the Ethereum Climate Platform in a significant carbon tonnage, and the beginning and the launch of the fundraising effort in the Ethereum community and the climate investing community that we will be bringing here this time of year.
Okay, thanks everybody. Guess we'll get a quick picture